Well, it happened. I don't know how, but it happened. A new Sony exclusive is out, and guess what? It's actually really, really damn good. This is Stellar Blade, and it's probably the only decent game that will come out all year. And it's a Sony exclusive no less, haven't seen a decent one of those in God knows how long. It's not a perfect game, but it comes pretty damn close. You've got some modern game design annoyances that show up here and there, but if you're in the mood for a game that doesn't waste your time with riding a horse through an open world for 100 hours, if you want something that's more to the point, a straightforward action game that you can play over and again just to enjoy the combat, Stellar Blade is one of the best games to hit the genre in years. So I actually went into Stellar Blade with fairly low expectations because I was getting real sick of seeing parrying cropping up in every game under the sun. But they're implemented pretty well in Stellar Blade because you can cancel out some of your attacks, mostly your heavy attacks, into a parry. So it gives you a good sense of responsiveness to combat and it keeps it flowing smooth. And if you fail a parry, you still block the attack. So it doesn't ever feel like you're being punished for trying to parry in this game. Combat is also balanced pretty well with unparryable attacks that you're meant to dodge through instead, so it's not just a non-stop parry fest. But where this game really shines is that you can make it as difficult as you want it to be. If you play it straightforward, it's a more casual experience where it only starts to get a little bit spicy towards the end. But for players that are more accustomed to action games, you can make this game pretty damn difficult. Start a fresh save on hard mode, it will kick your ass. Or just play through normal mode with the skin suit off, which removes your shield. That can also be a challenging experience. So this game is really ripe for trying out all sorts of really cool challenge runs. Now, at first, I was a little bit disappointed because there's only one weapon in the game, and the combo skill tree for it is pretty light. But it winds up not being an issue. You can have an engaging experience even if your combat system lacks complexity, as long as you've got great enemy variety and boss fights to back it up, which this game offers in spades. But in regards to the skill tree, it's a bit deceptive. It looks like there's a lot of room for customization here, like maybe you'd even think you could try to make a build. But you get so many skill points that I was able to max out whatever skills I wanted pretty early on, and I started banking a ton of skill points because most of the skill tree is gated behind story progression. By the end of the game, you'll have already unlocked 95% of the skill tree anyhow. But let's back it up a bit. Let's start from the very beginning of the game. The first major chunk of this game is fairly linear. It's focused more on densely packed halls filled with enemies. I love this. This is probably the best part of the game. There's not a whole lot of talking or cutscenes or forced walking segments. It's just a focus on combat and exploration. This is the part where the game almost hits perfection. Then you get to the city, the hub for the game, and it slowly starts to get worse. You get hit with like a dozen side quests. I hate side quests in games, and these are terrible. They're like, hey, help me find my cat, or oh, my motorcycle broke down in the desert. Can you go get my box that I was carrying with me? The desert overall is a low point for the game. It's this huge open map, and it's not really that fun or interesting to explore. It's mainly like a hub for you to partake in all of these side quests. If you don't do any of the side quests, you can get through it pretty quickly, and that really shows that it didn't really have the care or attention to detail that the first chunk of the game had. And there's a surprising amount of platforming in this game. I wasn't expecting that. And Eve doesn't control the best when you're jumping. She likes to slip off the platforms a lot. There's like this tower in the desert. I was so disappointed to see. I was like, please God, not another one of these towers that reveals part of the map. Why is this in every game? But thankfully there are only 2 towers in this game and only one that you need to climb. But going back to side quests, I hate side quests in almost every game. They are the death of pacing, especially in this game, which already has a good amount of exploration. You can fight bosses just running around exploring these environments. You can find treasure chests that have outfits or accessories. You don't need to have these side quests, they're unnecessary. At least you can ignore the side quests in most of these large desert regions that house most of them, and just focus on the main story so you've got that tight pacing. The game alternates between these more linear style stages and the big open maps. I guess they're trying to appeal to all kinds of players. I'd prefer if they just had a straightforward action game approach with non-stop linear levels. But lots of players want lengthy games packed with side quests and whatnot to pad out their playtime. At least it's not an open world game. And there's some great verticality in the second desert map, so there's still a good sense of exploration there. It's really just the first desert map, the Wasteland, that's the low point. But the one thing that stayed entertaining the entire time was the combat. The enemy design in this game is top notch. They're not just reskinned punching bags. Some have shields which force you to use parries to get through their defenses. Some enemies have little pouches that you need to aim at to shoot and explode. And the dungeon where you find them, you have limited ammo, so it encourages you to aim at these spots. Some enemies drop these little bloody sacks that crawl around, and when they get close to you, they explode into fire that lingers for a while. Some enemies can possess corpses, so you have to find the right opportunity to kill them quickly without being hit by the other enemies. It's a refreshing approach to enemy design. You're not going to fight them all the same way. Even when you reach the end of the game, the enemy variety doesn't let up. The game will introduce new enemies. These ones break apart once you kill them, and they chase you around, but they only have a chance to break apart. The fact that it's a chance is really cool, because if you're not paying attention to the sound they make when they split apart, they can ambush you from behind, so it's trying to test your situational awareness. But the bosses are the highlight. They test your entire suite of defensive skills, but it can still be easy to cheese bosses. Between spamming grenades, which knock down every enemy in the game as far as I can tell, even bosses, beta skills which can interrupt attacks, and burst skills which grant you invulnerability, you can trap most bosses, at least on normal mode, into a stun lock. But the difficulty ramps up for the last 4 bosses that end the game. They hit really hard, they all move super fast, and you need to parry their attacks multiple times in a row. Like, they'll attack with a flurry of like 6-7 attacks. And if you miss one, you just get comboed to death. And their balance gauge, which puts them in their vulnerable state, it takes a ridiculous amount of parries to deplete. They are a true test if you master the systems of the game. But there's more to Stellar Blade than just non-stop combat. Yeah, it can be platform heavy at times, but there's also a surprising amount of minigames here. There are some box moving puzzles, these yellow crates that are usually pretty brainless, and they take forever to move around. There are a ton of code puzzles where you need to find a password to open a lock, and these would be cool if you had to actually memorize the codes, but you can just press the hint button and see what you need to input, so why even bother? Just automatically input the code once I find out what the password is. There's this dungeon where you're stuck with just your gun, you can't use melee attacks at all, and it plays a little bit like a survival horror game. There are ambushes, there are puzzles to solve, you have to survive traps. One of the traps has lasers that close in on you while you kill waves of enemies, and it's only used once, so it feels more special that way. There are like these different little sliding minigames, there's a shoot the targets minigame, there's even a fishing minigame, and there are a ton of fish to catch, and there's of course a side quest tied to it, so if you like this kind of thing, there's a good amount of variety here, and you don't need to engage with most of it. It's just there for people that are looking for a break from the non-stop combat. And there's a really great amount of attention to detail in this game. The ladders are super cool. If you approach them from behind, Eve will spin around to the front with a little flourish. You don't have to walk around. There's dynamic music in the environments that seamlessly changes as you explore. The fashion is of course really great. You can find all these outfits in the wild or through some of the side quests. So exploration is rewarded, and you even unlock a barber where you can change your hairstyle and hair color. It's a little bit disappointing. I don't know why you can't change your hair in the menu once you unlock the hairstylist. You need to constantly go back to town and talk to the NPC to change it, even after you buy the hairstyles. And while I'm on the subject, there's only one save slot. I don't know what this obsession is with modern games, making it so difficult to have more than one save at a time. On PS5, you need to make a separate account and start a new game there, because if you start a new game without entering New Game Plus in Stellar Blade, you lose all of the outfits that you collected. Other little things that are annoying, there's like forced walking parts, which are in every game now. It's driving me crazy. And these start to ramp up in frequency as you approach the end of the game, and you just need to wait for characters to finish talking before you can continue moving on. There are unskippable cutscenes unless there's a cutscene before a boss and you die, then you can skip it. Sometimes, some bosses, you can't even skip this. You have to sit through the dialogue and just mash through it every time you die. But in New Game Plus, you can skip some cutscenes, not all of them. It just seems random. And fast travel is kind of limited in this game. You can't freely travel between zones with fast travel. You have to warp to your ship, and then from your ship you can choose which zone you want to teleport to. So if you want to try to tackle the whole slew of side quests that crop up toward the end of the game, they appear in these different regions, it can be very tedious. It's just another reason to ignore the side quests. But these are all nitpicks, because at the end of the day, Stellar Blade is an excellent action game. Just skip the side quests and you have a well-paced game with great enemy variety, intriguing level design that rewards exploration, and even some minigames to keep you moving along without becoming bored. Yeah, there's only one playable character and only one weapon type, but the game doesn't feel boring or repetitive in spite of the limited moveset, because the enemies are constantly fun to fight and all the bosses remain enjoyable, and towards the end you even get a little bit of a challenge. The difficulty is a little low on normal mode because it's easy to stun lock the bosses between using items and all these skills that you unlock. You can shred a boss's health bar without learning its moveset, but there is challenge here if you seek it. Wear the skin suit, play hard mode without entering New Game Plus, skip some of the exploration and miss out on the health and beta core upgrades. The game is just ripe for challenge runs. And that kind of stuff is what makes the game enticing to replay. I'm already playing through it again a second time, and hell, I'll probably play through it again another 2 or 3 times before the year's over, because it's just that addicting to play. It's like, finally, after 3.5 years, the PS5 has an exclusive worth a damn. Don't mistake that for meaning you should go out and buy a PS5 for just this game, especially when Sony is porting everything that they have on their consoles to PC eventually. But if you have a PS5 that's collecting dust, like I did, this game is a good excuse to wipe it down. It's not too often that we see a game that's reminiscent of something from the early 2000s, just a good old-fashioned action game where you can have fun. It's not something to take seriously. There's no mind-shattering story here. There's not really a whole lot of unique mechanics that you haven't seen elsewhere, no. What you've got with Stellar Blade is a game for people that want one thing and one thing only: to have fun.